and welcome to The Straw Hat with Rabbi David Wolkenfeld and Rabbinate Goldie Guy. We are the official podcast of Anshe Shalom B'nai Israel Congregation, an Orthodox synagogue in the Lakeview neighborhood of Chicago, Illinois.
We are recording the podcast this week, the last week of the month of Adar, Sheni. So it's almost Nisan, almost Pesach. And we wanted to begin with just some Pesach information and some Pesach content. The shul is once again hosting a Passover Seder on the second night of Pesach. When I say the shul is hosting a Pesach Seder, really, it's sort of a euphemism. Really what I say is
that I, as a representative of the
Rabbinate
shul,
Goldie is hosting a Seder at the shul that anyone can sign up to attend. We hope
it's going to be the first time that I'm leading a Seder that wasn't just myself, which happened during COVID, which is really exciting. I'm very excited to, and my family will be visiting, my parents and one of my brothers. So we hope to bring some of the Guy family Seder traditions to the Seder, and it's really exciting. I have an interest in different kinds of Haggadot and different kinds of practices at the Seder. I know that when my different families came together from my brother's wives, my sister-in-laws, when they joined the family, they brought their family traditions in. Like one of my sister-in-laws likes to bring props and finger puppets for each of the plagues and to engage all the kids as they go. And I also enjoyed over the years how I've not been the youngest person at the Seder. I'm the youngest of 5, so I've always had to do Manishtana, and then we had the kids, the grandkids, the nieces and nephews able to say the Manishtana. My other sister-in-law loves to make animal noises at Chad Gadya. I don't know if that's a thing that happens in everyone's house.
That is something that we do, and that's not something I grew up with, but it's something that I encountered as a young adult, and that is now part of our Sedarim as well.
It's really fun.
Yeah.
But also, here's something that I won't be doing, as that's a family tradition. So my mom and my dad both have family tunes that were passed down, like melodies that they use for the different parts of the Haggadah.
Yes.
And so when they melded, their compromise was to sing both, consecutively. And it's not like they do one night is my dad's tunes, one night's my mom's tunes. It's both nights, both tunes.
For which parts?
It's a lot of the. I mean, it depends, and I can a lot of the end songs.
It's a lot of end songs. If you
a lot of end songs, a lot of different parts that we have. Here are the different traditions, and we know.
So how are you going to pick? How are you going to pick which melody to do this year when you're leading? It's which parents.
So this came
like
up
more?
when
it's really hard.
How? Given that they will both be there. I don't know. I'm going to have to practice though, because it's not even how you go into this mode of which tune you use and your brain just goes there. So I've got 2. So there's going to be a lot of attention around the Torah, but also a lot of intention around the tunes and which ones to bring in
please.
And how to please my parents. So you can come and support me there.
Yeah, maybe bring a compromised melody that's neither, maybe a guest can show up with a melody of their own.
Yeah, or I'd love for people to share even traditions that they have at their Seders. Maybe if you're planning on coming to the ASBI Community Seder, maybe you can, comment below or submit your family custom, and we can incorporate it, because that's the magic of people coming together for this Seder. I'm really excited for it to see our.
Right, it's not in anyone's home. It's in the shul, which is everyone's home. So everyone should feel ownership over what we do and how we do it. And in terms of who should attend, if you are a family of 8 and you are the thought of making your own Seder is overwhelming, register for the shul Seder. If you're a single person and your roommates are going home to family and you not sure where you would want to go, come to the shul Seder. Or
you live on your own and you'd like to join people at shul, like you are used to doing when you want to engage in community, right? You come to ASBI, so that's what the Seder is too.
Yeah. Please, really, it's we have plenty of room for people to sign up, but it will be important for people to sign up relatively early so that we can plan and get food and everything, all those things. So please do sign up. We are both accepting sponsors, and also if the cost as listed is too expensive, let us know and we can make sure that that's not a barrier. So money's not a barrier, and we're accepting sponsorships. Okay, so it's not a barrier in either direction. You can pay less or pay more than the listed amount to attend. But we hope listeners to the podcast will come.
If you're talking about your traditions of how to run the Seder, do you have a specific time that you make sure to start and end? I know that our Seder, notoriously at home, goes pretty late. I won't do that here. But there are specific halachic times that you're supposed to.
Yeah, and anyone listening should remind me to make sure that we turn off the alarm for the night of the Seder, so the alarm doesn't go off.
Oh boy.
At Seder. But so this is I mentioned this in Shabbos morning as an example of a question that I frequently receive, and I have to schedule a meeting with someone to talk through in great detail how to handle this situation. The mitzvah of the Seder should take place at night, and not only it's actually in the Seder itself. It's sort of funny that people, right, like Yachal Rosh Chodesh, that little piece of Midrash that's part and parcel of the Seder, is telling us that the mitzvah of telling the story of the Exodus has to take place at nighttime, when the mitzvah of matzah and maror are done, performed at night, and yet it's just in the northern hemisphere. It's in these latitudes at this time of year, it doesn't get dark until rather late, later than many people eat, and later than many children find it easy, or older people find it easy to stay up. So it's not uncommon that people who care about doing the mitzvot at the halachic time are faced with being invited to attend a Seder at in-laws or grandparents, and with friends, and the Seder is going to start at 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or even 7 p.m. and it doesn't get dark until I don't know, something like it'll be like after 8, I believe, before it gets actually dark. So I would say, if this is your situation, we still have a couple of weeks before Pesach. Reach out and we can talk through precisely how to accommodate it. Like, one simple way to kind of shave some time is like when the Seder is called for 7 o'clock. That doesn't mean that you're like making Kiddush at 7 o'clock. That means that the guests are arriving at 7 o'clock and they're taking off their coats and they're they're giving you their little candy dish that they brought or whatever it is, and you're introducing each other and you're sitting at the table and you're pouring wine and you're going around and everyone's sharing their names, and then you're getting ready. So that can take 5, 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe. The part that should be at dark, like the first cup of wine, which is the Kiddush wine. Like that's a nighttime mitzvah. But everything before then can take place before. So that's like an easy, it could be an easy way to do this. You can also, if you're running the Seder and you have like some input in how it's run, you could also shift the order a little bit. You could sing those songs at the beginning, right? When the kids are still awake. Chad Gadya.
That's great.
Echad Miodea. You could sing all the highlights. Dayenu, all the highlights. You can do.
Have you done that before?
We did this that first COVID Pesach. We had like a Erev Pesach afternoon Zoom call with my mother and my sister and my sister-in-law, and we sang some of those, my kids sang Ma'anis Shana, and we sang, I think, some of the songs at the end with the family, and then we, turned off the computers and got ready for Yantif.
You didn't repeat those parts?
We may have. I mean, the younger kids were asleep, and I think we did things as much as later, but like, as a smaller group. And so, some people, depending on, we did that hours before Yantif started in the afternoon. Right. But I know there are some people who, and the shul shared guidance for people who wanted to do that, leading right up until sunset, in which case you would do more of those, Seder elements just before sunset. And then like after dark, you would do like the mitzvot, like in a more efficient way, right? The 4 cups of wine and telling the story, maybe even just the, not every page of Magid necessarily. Right. Just the highlights of Magid, and then, all those nighttime mitzvot. Now, if you're not in charge of the Seder schedule because you're a guest at someone's house, it can be a little more tricky. What you could do, though, is just assuming that by the time you get to washing for eating matzah, it's already dark. And then you could just, have matzah after dark, and then during the meal, while everyone is eating, their second bowl of soup, you can have another cup of wine and say, Magid or parts of Magid, read parts of Magid during the meal. And then you finish up together with everyone else. So, so there are variations depending on the timing and when exactly sunset is and when the meal starts, but there are strategies. I think it's important to maintain relationships with family and, our big, diverse, wonderful families where everyone has different ways of experiencing Judaism. I think it's also important to do mitzvot in a careful, conscientious way. Yes. And, the Seder mitzvot at nighttime, that's like literally in the Seder itself. Like the instructions are there. It said, Yachim Rosh Chodesh, you might think you could do this from Rosh Chodesh, but Tam Lamar, Al Matzah Marim Yachluhu, right? You have to, these are nighttime mitzvot. It's there in the Haggadah. So I think it's, mitzvot should be done in a conscientious and meticulous way, but also in a way that's like conscientious and meticulous about maintaining our friendships and our relationships with all the other people we love and are important to us.
Right, and also making sure that all the kids are engaged in the appropriate ways. Like it would seem that the whole Seder talks about how to engage kids and have them experience the story of the Exodus and feel the formation of our peoplehood and understand what this is all about. And yet it can be so hard for little kids, really, if we're keeping mind, we're being mindful of the timing for the halachic mitzvah, right?
It's
hard.
Definitely,
it's a hard balance.
I'd say daylight savings time was not, has challenges for Jewish parents. I'd say Purim after daylight savings time is like, that's like, maybe you want a child to like hear the Megillah reading and but it's like 7:30, 7:40, 8 o'clock. That's really hard. You want children at the Seder, but like, again, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, second night, whatever start time is, it's like really late for young children. Not so
like
simple.
Messing with their sleep schedules and doing a nap
so
the day before.
So what we've done with our, we have not, obviously the kids are, I think bedtime has been like our, especially when our children were younger, that was like the thing we did as parents that we were like, this we're going to be good at as parents, bedtime. So we were very, very invested in bedtime and the rituals of bedtime and not being too late. And I was like, we were really invested in that as parents for many, many years. And we didn't really compromise. And on Seder too, we didn't, in general, if I'm recalling, like our early years as parents, I don't think we kept our kids very late for Seder. I just remember our first years, the year we moved to Princeton, it was the first year like hosting like Seder like in a professional capacity with like lots of guests, and family came to us. And I remember my mother-in-law, Leah Shalom, drove up to our home in Princeton like a week or so before Pesach. Her like car, like it was like a cartoon. Like the car like screeched to a stop in front of our house, like this cloud of smoke, and then there was like a zoom, and the car like zoomed off, and there was like all the boxes of her Pesach dishes. I think she was very eager to leave us with her Pesach dishes, and not be hosting Pesach again. So that year, the twins were infants, and Noam was 2, and so the years that we were starting to like host Sedarim, our oldest was 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, these our kids were very, very young, and they went to bed at more or less a normal time, and we had like a children's Seder at lunchtime on Yontif, and so whatever like Haggadah they made in school, we would like go through it, and we would do like most of the ritual. We'd have karpas, and we would dip, and we would all those things at lunch, and tell the story. All those we do those as like a kids Seder that we did, and that's something that's I think available, and and as the kids got older, they were more and more present at the Seder, and actually it's something that really I kind of a positive memory from the COVID years is like a Seder just with our nuclear family, and I think obviously very sad not to be with extended family, not to be with guests, but it was very special to focus on our children, and I hopefully will not forget them, in future years, and continue to appropriately prioritize their experience as well. So this past Shabbat was the second week that I've been reading through an essay and discussing it. In the Shabbat afternoon pre-mincha shiur slot. It's an essay written by Akiva Shai Wozner, who's an academic of sort of, modern Jewish thought. He wrote a biography of Rav Shimon Shkap and his like legal theory. He's a really interesting guy. This essay was published, 15 years ago or so, and he's sort of grappling with the question of what it means to be faithful to halakha. I think I'm going to like continue to process this through the shiur for the coming weeks. Maybe this is going to be what I teach about on Shavuot to like maybe hopefully a broader audience or a different audience. But it's a really interesting question because like there's a simple answer. I think like you go up to somebody on the street, what does it mean to be faithful to halakha? I think they'll say to be obedient to the demands of halakha, right? And then any deviance, any gap between the way one observes mitzvot and what halachic demands would entail, it's either laziness or sinfulness or the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, misleading you or swaying you, etc. What else could there be? And he's trying to develop a different model that could explain like really serious Jews who care a lot about mitzvot, who love God and love the Torah and are very meticulous in their approach to mitzvot, but there are some gaps in their observance which can't really be explained by laziness or carelessness or being overcome by the evil inclination because they're pretty consistent in, right? Like you can't, like.
Does he bring examples?
So he does. We've discussed. I mean, so come to the class on Shabbos afternoon. We've talked about a number of examples, and I think even more helpful than the examples, he gives like a really interesting metaphor, which I find was like so compelling. Like the first metaphor, like is halakha. The voice of halakha is like the voice of a commanding king, right? And so the only approach is obedience, right? Okay, and any failure is a failure. The other metaphor he develops is that of like a doctor giving good advice for healthy living. And you can listen to advice of your physician and care a lot about, medical science and, and really believe that listening to your doctor will lead to healthy outcomes. But you and the doctor and everyone else knows that medical science doesn't provide every relevant factor in making a decision about how you're going to live and how you're going to act. So the example he gives, I find it so compelling. Imagine an actor who is who is performing on theater, and the role he's going to play is someone who smokes heavily, and so to play this role, he's going to have to smoke a cigarette, in the theater. Let's say 2 cigarettes a night for 5 nights a week for the duration of this play, say a couple of months maybe, right? So this actor speaks to his doctor. She's going to tell him, like, you can't smoke, right? From the perspective of medicine, any cigarettes, even a small number of them, is harmful to your health. As a physician, giving you guidance, like based on my expertise, based on my qualifications, providing medical guidance, I can't condone even 1 cigarette. But I think we would find it quite reasonable that an actor might say, well, for the sake of my ability to pay the rent, for the sake of my ability to have a career that I find rewarding, for the sake of my career, which I think is actually contributing something to humanity through the dramatic arts, right? I think it's worth the relatively minor medical risk of smoking a few cigarettes for this one role that I want to take on. I think that is how we treat, I think, medical guidance, right? And I think that's like a really interesting metaphor. Like based on this metaphor, halakha is like really like divine wisdom for how to live a good life, how to have a rich community, how to build a stable and just social order, but it doesn't contain all of the relevant factors that we might choose in making a decision. So the part of the essay that we haven't gotten to yet is he has to like justify this from sources that kind of demonstrate that, and he hasn't done that yet. So we have to sort of see if he can maintain it. But I know the conversations among the participants in the class have been very rich, and cool. Even if you've missed the first 2 weeks, if you've heard this, if that's a summary of the first 2 weeks, so show up for every Shabbos afternoon, 45 minutes before Mincha, and we'll continue really, really rich conversation. Since we last recorded a podcast, we celebrated Purim at the shul. Purim was super fun this year.
Yeah.
So much more fun than last year. No offense to last year.
Hey. But that was a lot of work. But also, this was so much better.
Yeah, it was nice to see lots and lots of people in shul. It was really great as well. They were able to broadcast Megillah over Zoom for those who couldn't be in shul. That included people who had COVID, who couldn't, responsibly leave their home, and included people who didn't want to get COVID, who couldn't responsibly leave their home. And we were able to provide that for several dozen people at night and during the day, and for dozens, hundreds maybe who came to hear Megillah and to do the mitzvot of Purim in the shul. We had an extravaganza, which was absolutely extravagant.
It was so beautiful. And I think even the Megillah reading, just being back, like having been here last year, and having been at Megillah reading when we were masked, and there weren't kids running around, and this year felt so different that there was like a background noise, there was the liveliness of the shul you could hear.
Last year Purim, like it's sort of, I don't even like to remember, it's like quantify, like last year Purim we still had capacity limits imposed by the city. We couldn't have more than 50 people at any Megillah reading, so that was like, it really constrained our ability to do a lot. And I think most people last year were experiencing Megillah reading over Zoom, and we had a number of in person, but it was limited, and so it was like a very, very different.
So there were kids. I ran the slideshow with the fun illustrations for Haman, and that was really fun. Mm-hmm. And we had our women's Megillah readings back, and that was really fun. But the extravaganza, I think, was really a highlight at the center on Halstead, and we had an amazing reptile show, which is like not something that I thought I was like, I don't know what a reptile show was before, I guess.
I think reptiles have to be part of the Purim traditions now. Every holiday should have a reptile
Like,
show.
who knew? It was a great fit, and the kids were playing with them afterwards with the open zoo time. We got some great pictures of kids, like, handling lizards and turtles and frogs. It was very cool.
What I hope comes from the extravaganza is that people realize how, like, that feeling of happiness that you felt seeing people you like and people you know or people you are getting to know, other Jewish people coming together to, like, embrace being Jewish and do mitzvah together. Like, that positive feeling is something that you can have like every week, every day. Like, you can come to shul and experience that. And something I like from my, like, perch in the shul on Shabbat morning, as I see people coming in, there've been, like, weeks where I see people like, oh, it's so nice that you're here. Oh, but your, like, close friends were here last week. Oh dear, I hope you have a fun time. Your closest friends came last week, but they're not here this week for some reason. So, like, I think that's there's, like, it's like a coordination, challenge that we need to, like, work through. Really, like, once upon a time, it was like everyone came to shul just about every week, and so you could come here and know that you would see lots of people who you cared about and who cared about you, and you could have that spiritual experience and intellectual experience and also that social experience without having to plan, and it was just automatic. And I think what's happened over these COVID months is that people have lost the habit of just automatically by default on Shabbos morning I'm going to be at shul, and so and people have moved to out of state and people have moved to the suburbs, and so some very people we care a lot about, we're missing them, and then people who are still in Chicago and still around, they're out of habit of just automatically showing up. So I show up, but I don't see my closest friends, and the people who are here, I don't know them yet. They're, friends I haven't made yet. And so I think we just, all of us have to sort of, like, break out our inner extrovert and try to introduce ourselves to people who are really nice and friendly and are eager to meet new friends. And then just keep coming, like, week after week, because then your friends will come and they'll see you, and then you'll remind each other of how happy this place and this community can make you. And
that's what made the extravaganza so fun, right? We came together, and, like, so many people were there, people who I've seen, some people who I haven't met before, and it was so lovely to see the entire, like, almost the entire ASBI community coming together around mitzvot, but also having fun and socializing. So we had our Suda, we had our Megillah reading, we did the mitzvot together, and it was really great just to be together. So I think that's what we're saying, like, shul can be, and shul has been.
Shul is that way. Shul is that way, but just for, for not for as many people as it once was.
Yeah.
I think if you've come in recent months and you felt like, just like some sadness at your friends who aren't there. So, like, I don't know, like, call your friends and say, I'm going to go to shul this Shabbat, okay? Even though I haven't been for, like, a couple of months, or I haven't been for a couple of weeks, but this week I'm going to come. Like, I hope to see you there too. Like, that's, like, a very reasonable thing to tell a friend on a Friday afternoon.
There's a great Kiddush this week, right?
This week we have a great Kiddush. This week we do have a great Kiddush. It's a
tell your friends.
A birthday Kiddush, Fleisha Kiddush, very, very, but I actually don't think it's the food. I don't think it's the Kiddush. I think it's the seeing people we like and having them see us.
It's both.
It's both. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not there for the fleshik, so
I think since I have come to work at Anshe Shalom, I think I've consumed very, very few. Very few calories have been consumed by me at Kiddush. I think it's, like, a lot of talking. I don't get to eat very much at Kiddush. So
that's why everyone else listening to this podcast didn't go into the rabbinate. Like you and I don't. If
you like eating a Kiddush, don't become a congregational rabbi. That's sound advice. Sound advice. Totally. Well, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. I know we have listeners all over the world, or so the website tells us. So please, if you're in an exotic location listening to the podcast, send us a note one of these days. Tell us who you are and how you came across the Straw Hat podcast.
The Straw Hat all over the world.
And if you're in Anshe Shalom and you're listening, like, let me know as well. It's so fun when people come up to me and say, oh, like, follow up, like, here's a comment based on something I learned in the podcast. Like,
it happens a lot.
It does. It does. No, we have like about like dozens of people, like, listen every week. So it's for sure it happens. Most of them are in Chicago. So it definitely happens, but you could tell us that, like, that's very validating. So listen, enjoy, and give us some feedback.